Hi and welcome to this QwikTouchPro video. In this video we're going to be continuing where we left off in our last video where we started to use QwikTouchPro and Keystroke to build a kiosk. And in that video we created this splash screen which opens Keystroke and clerks us in and redirects us then to this Touch Here to Begin template. And this Touch Here to Begin template, then a customer is going to be able to walk up to this and touch it and move on to the next screen where they're going to be able to start to add items to their cart. And that's the template we're going to make in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with Control N for new template. And it's going to be just like we did in the previous templates. This is going to be a portrait, run on a portrait kiosk, so it's going to be 1080 by 1920. We're going to run in window mode, lock the width, set it to 100% the height, and right justify, say OK. And it's going to go ahead and save this template as kiosk_sales screen, and hit save. And again, this is a template. It's going to have a list of inventory items that a customer is going to be able to touch. That'll add those items to their invoice, and then they'll be able to check out and move on to the next screen. So let's start up at the top. Let's just kind of lay this out a little bit. I'm going to put a border up here and zoom in. Let's zoom out a little bit. And if I hold down the mouse button, or I'm sorry, the space bar, I can pan the canvas with the mouse. So let's tweak and nudge that with the Control key, get it into place. I don't want, no border thickness, no border radius. We just want a big kind of square here. Zoom out and pan, and we're just lining everything up here. And probably want that. I'm going to shift and down arrow key, make that a little bigger. That looks pretty good. Let's put some text on here. And this text is going to say something like add items. Now this would be another good place for some advertising probably. Up here at the top, this could be some transitioning or scrolling list of sales or items or whatever. But for our purposes, we'll just have it say add items. And let's right justify that and just get it lined up over here. I might want that bold, and I think I'll make the font size a little bigger. That's probably good enough. And I actually, instead of having this will be a white background with black text, I want to invert that. I'm going to make the background black, and then I'm going to click this text and change its color to white so we can see it. Okay, and let's save that. Next thing we'll do on this template, we want a couple of buttons down at the bottom. We want one that they can hit cancel, which will take them back to the Touch Here to Begin screen, or a checkout button that takes them to the next screen. So let's zoom in on the bottom and use the space bar to pan down. I'm going to just start with another border. So we're going to create a couple buttons. No border thickness, no border radius. Let's grab a text control, and I'm going to select both of those now and right click and choose group. And now we have kind of a button here. And this first button is going to say something like cancel. And it's going to be red. Let's give it maybe a white text, and let's kind of align this. I'm going to hold down Control and then the Shift keys and the arrow keys to pan it around. Increase the font size a little bit. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to copy with Control C and then paste with Control V. Oops, I was up in this top box. Let's do that again. Control C, Control V, and this button is going to say Checkout. And it's going to be green instead of red. So I'm going to just drag this slider up to find a green that's kind of in the same little hue or color swatch. Say OK. Next thing I would do is I want both these buttons to be the same size, and I want them to be the full width. So I can select both of those, and if I hit Control G on my keyboard for group, it groups them as one control, and now I can resize them, and they'll both resize and kind of maintain their relationship to each other. And I can right click and ungroup now. So that's good. Next one we'll work on, let's take another border. Down here right above the checkout button, let's put a little, kind of like we do in Keystroke here. Let's click into Keystroke. As we add items, you can see we have a running total of the current invoice down here. So we'll add a label down here in the lower right hand corner of our template for that. And we'll probably also put on there how many items are on this template. So, starting with our border here, same thing. I'm just going to, kind of like I did at the top, I'm just going to make this, take the full width. I don't want any border thickness or border radius. Zoom in again with the mouse wheel, pan down. I'm going to move this up a little bit, zoom out. Now we want some text over here, so I'll grab a text control, pop it on here. This is going to be the amount due, so let's just put some placeholder text in there of just some big number so we'll know how big we can make this. And let's just get it sized up. I got to lower the font. I'm just going to hit the down arrow key with the cursor in that box to resize the font. Maybe make that bold. And yeah, that looks fine. Let's move it up just a little bit. And probably right justify that. And I'm going to make a copy of that with Control C, Control V. And this one's going to say something like 4 items or something, however many items are on this invoice. Let's change the font size down a little bit. Probably don't want it to be bold. Zoom in, see where we're at. Let's get everything to fit a little better here. Okay, that looks fine. Move that down just a little bit, and I think that one's fine. So next thing I want to do here, instead of having this border be white, I really want it to be this gray from this background. And I like to be consistent when I'm making these templates and always reuse the same colors when I can. So I could come in here to get this gray. I could come under Template, Solid, and just click highlight and copy and paste the color here into my other template. What we're going to do in this case is let's drag another border onto the canvas. And we're going to make a little color picker that we can reuse later. So same thing, let's radius 0. Let's maybe a border of 1 on the color picker, that's fine. And I'm going to set the background color of this to be this light gray. And the way QwikTouchPro works is when you open up a color picker like this, any colors in use on your template show up on this little color picker where they're easy to grab. So I'm just going to pick the gray that I want, and I'm going to hit Control-C, Control-V to copy that. Change the background color of this one to be this dark gray. And I'm going to select both of those and copy them. And I can delete them now. So let's get them off this template when we're done with them. Go back to our sales screen and paste. And now that I've added these two controls to this template, I can come down and select my background here and choose whichever of these colors I want. And I want this to be a light gray. And I think I want both these font colors to be that dark gray. So we'll go up to color, and it's now, again, because I pulled it in from the other template, it's available. I think that needs to come up just a little bit. And what else? I think also up here at the top, instead of having that be white, let's see how that looks as a light gray. Maybe too light. That looks good. Not quite as stark against the black and the white, I guess. So let's finish up this little color picker really quickly. We've got two more colors that we've added to this template. We've got the red and the green. So let's add those to our color picker. So I'm just going to copy and paste that control. Zoom in here. Move that into position. Where am I? Get those back onto the grid snap. Move that into position, and let's make this one, whoops, let's go back here. I want to make this one red, and I'll copy and paste it and make a copy of it that's green. And now I've got these four colors in use in this template. If I copy and paste this control to another template in the future, I'll have all of these colors available to me. But instead of copy and paste it, we're actually going to right click on it and choose group to group them. And the icon changes these little white circles. And now I can right click and choose custom control, and I can save this as a custom control, and I'm going to call it CC for custom control. Let's go color palette and hit save. And we're actually done with this now. We can delete this because all of these colors now exist on this template and we can pick them. But now when we move on to our next template, we'll have all these colors available to us. Let's hit delete that, hit delete on that. And just if you haven't seen a custom control before, now that I've saved it, we can drag it in with this custom control toolbox item, and we can just browse out or click, select it, drag it onto the canvas, and there's our colors. So we're done with this. Let's go ahead and delete it and save our template again and preview our template and see where we're at here. We need to set a background color. We're still transparent on that. And we need to wire up these labels next. So instead of saying $9,999, we want to say $40.59 or whatever. And the way we're going to get that information is through the keystroke data port. So let's set that up now. And that's under, what is it? Transaction, parameters, data port. And all you need to do on the data port is put checks in all these boxes so we can respond to these events. And it's pretty much set up by default. It's going to write this data port out to a TRN1 KFO file since this is register 1. And essentially then anytime anything updates this invoice, this data port file is going to update and we'll be able to read that in. So really nothing to set up here. Make sure you have checks in all these boxes. Hit OK. And let's go back into QwikTouchPro now and set that up in there. And actually go to template background. Let's make that template a solid color first before I forget, and save that again. So now we need to set up our keystroke data port in QwikTouchPro. And we do that again under data, data sources. We'll hit new, and we're going to browse or select down here on keystroke data port, KFO, and browse out. And to configure this again, we just need to browse out to that TRN1 KFO file that keystroke's going to create. And that's in my tutor folder. And because I'm register 1, it's going to be TRN1 KFO. If I were register 2, it would be TRN2. So let's just hit OK. And I'm going to hit create on that. And let's call this keystroke data port. Save. We don't need to add this to our active template. We can go ahead and say yes. All this really does when you add it to the active template is it shows up on this list now of data sources where you can go in and add macros to it. So anyway, what we do want to do is use that data port now to wire up these two labels. And we're going to do that through data binding. And we're going to come under data, under the data binding section. And if we hit this little browse icon, we're going to browse out to our data source, which is the keystroke data port. And we're going to pick the value we want off of this list. And the value we want is amount due in this case. It just happens to be the top one on the list. So I'm going to hit apply. And amount due corresponds to this label here, $40.59. And what we do when we data bind something, now that I've hit apply and it's data bound, you can see over here in my properties window that we have a data source of the data port and we're bound to the amount due path. And that just means that we're always going to sync this text of this label up to whatever the keystroke data port says. So when we add an item to this and the item and the amount due changes, it's going to automatically update this label without us having to refresh the template or run macros or anything like that. So let's set this back to, for our purposes, we'll just set it to some text we can read because it doesn't matter. It's data bound. So when we try to, when we preview this template, it's always going to show what the data port shows, not what we typed in this box. So that's that. We want to do this guy, which is 4 items, and we're going to data bind that the same way. And this one is actually going to be something like total quantity shipped, I think. And I get that information by just opening up that TRN1 KFO file and looking for the values I'm looking for. We want total quantity shipped, and we're going to hit apply. And again, we can, let's just save that and preview it. So now we'll see our labels down here in the bottom. It says 4059 because that's the total invoice. We've got 3 items on this invoice. And if I start adding to that, we'll see that these numbers automatically change automatically with the data port updating. We don't have to refresh them. So the next thing we need to do, though, is we need to add this $sign to the 74. And I want that to say 5 items, not just the number 5. And we're going to do that through string formatting. So we're going to go back into QwikTouchPro, back under the Data tab, Data Binding. And let's select our amount due label first. And there's a blog post on this, and I'm sure I've covered it in previous videos. So we're just gonna do this. This curly bracket 0. Let's paste that into Notepad where we can see it. This little curly bracket 0 is a token that represents whatever value is in our data path. Let's close that. So we're going to say we want to see the amount due, and if we put this little :C, it'll format it as currency. Again, that's been covered, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time. We'll just hit apply. And it's come down to total quantity. And same thing, we don't want it to say total, we don't want to say the number 7, we want to say 7 items. So we're going to put our little token in that represents our quantity shipped, and then we can put text around that. So we'll say items afterwards, and it'll just show now whatever your total quantity is with the word items after it. And hit apply and save and just preview that and see how that looks. And now we can see we have the $sign, it says 5 items. If we add an item to that, that's all going to update automatically. All right, so the next thing we'll do here, I think we're ready to start adding our inventory item list to our template here. So let's right-click, exit that, get back into QwikTouchPro. So we're going to create a scrolling list of inventory items here, but we don't want to create each inventory item individually. I don't want to drag controls on here and wire up macros for a whole bunch of controls. We want to dynamically create those. And we're going to do that through a keystroke inventory export. So let's go ahead and show our desktop. And if I go into my keystroke folder, I have created this batch file in here called refresh inventory. And all this does is run a KS export in the tutor folder, and flags equals 4 means add column headers to the export. So if we close that, and let's see, I should have an export.txt in here somewhere. Oh, there it was. If I come down here and delete my export.txt and I run my refresh inventory, we should see our export.txt export came back up. And we're going to base all of our inventory items off of this export. And what that means is if you ever need to change these items, you can just re-export your keystroke inventory. Like if your prices change or your descriptions or something like that, you don't have to recreate buttons. You can just re-export the file. So now that we've created our export.txt file, let's close that. We're ready to use it. We'll go back into QwikTouchPro. And again, we need to create a data source. So we're going to go to data sources, new. This is going to be a comma separated values file, that export text file. And we're just going to browse out to the file we created, which is in C keystroke. It's export text. And we're going to hit this first checkbox here that says first row contains column headers. That was that flags equals 4. And these are all the values we're going to import from that export file. We've got stock number, code, department description, all of that. So let's hit create, and let's call this keystroke inventory exports. And hit save. And again, we don't need to add this to our current template. So that's our data source. That's every inventory item we have. And next thing we're going to need to create is we need to tell QwikTouchPro how we want to describe or display each one of those inventory items. And we're going to do that through a template. But first thing we're going to do is lay it out. Let's see. I want to go back down to this before we do anything else. I want to set this back to just text that looks normal while I'm looking at it, instead of saying amount due or whatever. And this is going to say, let's say 4 items. And I want to lay out my template a little bit here. I want to see maybe 3 inventory items wide by maybe 4 inventory items tall. And we could measure this out right. We know this template's 1080 or 10.8 columns, so we could do the math and figure out how wide all of our buttons need to be. But I'm kind of lazy, so I'm just going to drag a border on here and scroll in. And if I make 2 copies of that, because I want 3 items wide, and copy that, paste it, and I'm just going to copy both of those, paste them again. And I've got my little 3x4 matrix item. If I select all of those and hit Control-G for group, I can now move these and resize them as a group. And I want to, for this template, I'm going to leave a little room here. We're going to have a little department filter going down the left side. So we're going to leave a little space for that. And then let's just stretch this over. We'll zoom in and move this over. This is a little hard to grab, but move that over. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key and the down arrow key just to move this quickly to the bottom, since we need to cover a lot of territory here. Shift down again. All right, so that's what my inventory items are going to look like. And if I right-click on that and ungroup those now, I can delete these, because the only reason I did all that was just to see how big I want an inventory item. So now I know if I create an inventory item that's roughly 293 by 387, and we'll have to fudge the numbers a little bit here, that should be about the right size to fit this screen. So anyway, let's just do copy, and let's create our new template. And again, we're creating an inventory item template here. So this is, this will show the price in the description or whatever, and it will show one of these for each of our inventory items. So anyway, let's hit new, and the size needs to be, the width was 293. Let's just round and make it 293, and let's make the height 387. It's probably close enough. Oops, I did that wrong. Template properties. I want that to be 2.93, or actually just 2.9, and I want this one to be 3.8. That way too big. There we go. All right. So now if I paste in that control I copied from the previous template, which you see is mostly going to fit. We had to play with the numbers a little bit, but this is how big our inventory item is going to be. So first thing I'm going to do is save this. Control S, and I'm going to go to keep this separate from our actual templates. Instead of a capital kiosk at the beginning, I'm going to do a lowercase I for item template, and this will be an inventory item template, and we'll hit save. And again, this is going to represent all of our inventory items. So let's just kind of mock this up a little bit. Let's put a plain text on here, and maybe at the top of this button, we're going to say something like description. And just move that a little bit. And maybe underneath it, oops, undo that. Copy the control and paste it. Maybe we want a long description here, or the extended description. We'll word wrap that one. And then maybe below that, let's copy and paste it again. Maybe we're going to want the price or something down here. So 99.99. And let's just save this before we go any further. And let's go back to our sales screen and finish setting this up. We're done with this control. We can hit delete. That was just to tell us how big we needed to make these items without having to get the calculator out. And now we're ready to drag a data view onto the canvas. And data view wants 2 things. It wants a data source, which is that keystroke inventory export we created. And it wants an item template to represent each item. And that's what we just created here, this inventory item template. Let's see, the only thing I think we want to change here is we want the list to scroll vertically instead of horizontally. We want to scroll up and down instead of left and right. And we're going to say OK. And you can see now we get this list. And there's, for each of our inventory items in that export file, and I'm holding down Shift and the right arrow key again, we're going to see 1 item for every item in that export file. And got the size a little small, so let's resize that. Pan down and zoom in and pan down. And we should be able to grab this. Oops. Zoom in again. Hold down the Shift key and the down arrow key then. All right. And let's preview our template here. So what we have right now is we can scroll up and down this list, and there's one of these boxes for every single item in our keystroke inventory export. And now, instead of having them all say description, long description, and price, let's go ahead and actually bind these up like we did with the data port. So hit exit, go back into QwikTouchPro. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go back into our inventory item template. Now, instead of having this say the word description, we want to actually show the description from the inventory item we're looking at. And we're going to do that through data binding again. So we're going to go to the data tab, select description. And instead of our data port, we're going to browse out with this little icon and do our keystroke inventory export. And on our list, we're going to pick the field we want at the top here, which is description. Hit apply. Long description. To find that, I'm going to hit the letter L a few times, just kind of cycle through the L's until I get to long description. There it is. Apply. This one I think is probably base price. And we know that's $1, so we're going to format it with our little currency string formatting, hit apply. But I want to take a moment here. We need to size these labels. We don't Description's not what this label is actually going to say. So let's go back into keystroke for a minute here. And I want to find an inventory item. Let's hit F, or what is it, insert? Yeah. I just want to find a long inventory item so I can figure out how big to make these labels, how to size them. And it looks like ballpoint pen is probably close. So I just want to go into this and copy that description. Oops, how do I Control C to copy that description? And if I paste that up here, there we go. And is there a long description? There isn't. Let's find one that has a long description. I think 11-inch writing tablet maybe has one. Yeah. Copy that and paste that in. And remember, these labels are bound, so it doesn't matter what we type in here. We're just putting these in here so we know how big to make the labels and we can style them a little bit. Base price, we know, I don't know, $999.99 maybe is the most expensive item we're going to have on here. So now let's start to resize these. Let's make the text bigger. It's good. And I want this to be maybe that dark gray again instead of black. And now remember, we can drag our custom control on here, grab our color palette that we created a minute ago, and now I can highlight my text and I'll have that dark gray available to me. Same thing, we can select both of those, grab our dark gray. Oops, did the light gray there. Let's do the dark gray, and we're done with the color picker here, so I'll delete that now. Ballpoint pen fine tip isn't fitting, so let's try to wrap that to 2 lines, and I think we need to make it a little taller probably. There we go. Description could be quite a bit bigger. Let's see. And again, just maybe we'll make that bold. Let's align this at the top and hit save again and go back in here and just refresh our template, see where we're at. All right, so now we've got all of our inventory items, 11-inch writing tablet, its description, its price. We don't have a $ on the price. And the reason for that is if we go back under data sources and go and edit that keystroke inventory export we created, we have this option when we create this file to tell it what all these columns are, whether they're text or numbers, and we need to go down to base price and set that to a decimal so that QwikTouchPro knows to format it as a number. So anyway, let's hit update and template refresh, and we should have $ on all of those now. So the next thing I think we want to do here, let's go into our keystroke folder, into our tutor folders in here somewhere. Sort that by name, I guess. So in the tutor folder or my data folder, there's this photos folder, and this is where you keep images for your inventory items. So all of the promotional items in Keystroke, or most of them anyway, have images associated with them. And the way Keystroke does the items here, or the images for these, is it's stock number 3 for the clock. So it's I for image, stock number 3. And let's just actually just copy that and look at what that means. Paste that in. So the path to the clock logo is keystroke tutor photos i3.jpg. Zoom in a little bit so you can see that. So we're going to do, we need that path, and we're going to substitute 3 with our little string formatting trick with whatever the current stock number is. So I'm just going to copy that and close that, close that, close that, go back into QwikTouchPro. And what we want to do here is we want to create a conditional template that says if any of these items are promotional items, we know they have an image, and we want to display that image using that image path we just saw. So let's go back into inventory item template, and I'm going to start with this as a base. So let's do file, save as, and I'm going to call this inventory item template, let's say promotional. And this will be a template we show specifically for promotional items. So let's hit save. And I think what we'll do here is, since we know there's an image on these items, let's delete the long description and replace it with the image. And I'm going to drag an image onto the canvas. We need some placeholder here. Let's browse out to my desktop for our keystroke logo. We'll copy that into our programs folder or our media folder. And again, holding down the shift key, we're just going to move this around and get it kind of centered and about where we want it. All right, so now we need to bind this image. We bound the text here to be the description. This is the base price. We want to bind this to be the stock number with that string formatting around it. So let's go back under data. And when you do data binding on a text control, you bind the text. When you do data binding on an image control like this, you're going to end up binding the image path. So got the image selected, got our keystroke inventory export. We want the stock number. So we'll scroll up to number, which is the first item on the list. And I'm just going to paste in this string format that we pulled. This is what we created in Notepad. And again, it's C, keystroke, tutor, photos, I, and then whatever the stock number is, .jpg. And let's hit apply. And if we look over here in our tool palette, so we're bound up now to the keystroke inventory export. Our path is the stock number. And then we're going to replace the stock number with this string that points out to the image path. So let's just save that, go back into the sales screen. Next thing we need to do is right click on our data view here, and let's actually rename that first. I'm going to call this DV inventory list. And now let's right click on it, configure data view. And we have an option here for a conditional template. Let's browse out to that. And we're going to say if the department equals PM for promotional, we want to show our special template, which is our inventory item promotional, and just hit add and OK, and we'll save that. And you won't be able to see this in the editor, you have to preview it. But when we preview the template now, we should see that for most of our items, we're showing the long description. But if it's a promotional item, we show this special template that shows the image on it. So next thing let's have it, so when you click one of these items or touch one of these items, let's have it go ahead and add that item to our keystroke sales invoice. And the way we're going to do that, let's click back in, clear our transaction. The way we add items is we type in the stock number, so stock number 3, for example, and then we hit return or enter, and that adds it to our invoice. So we're going to do the same thing here. When we touch one of these buttons, send the stock number they clicked on, and then an enter. So let's go back into QwikTouchPro. I'm just going to right click on the data view and go to macro editor. And this is DB inventory list. When the selection changes, meaning when they touch one of these items, we're going to go to active program, send text. And the text we want is the stock number of the item they clicked on. And we're going to get that again through our source control builder because you can't just type it in. It's different depending on the item. So we'll hit source control builder. And this is going to be in our, we want to go out to our data view. We're going to choose DV inventory list, and we want the stock number, and this will be the stock number of the item that they just selected. So let's hit OK and add, and then we're going to active program, send code, return, add. So when we touch one of these items, we're going to send the stock number of whatever item they touched, and then we're going to send a return. And let's just see how that works. Control save, Control S to save, Control P to preview. And if I come up and touch a mouse pad now, we should add the mouse pad to our inventory list. If I come down and add a canvas bag, that'll get added, and coffee cup, etc., etc. And one thing while we're here looking at this, if we try to add a baseball cap, which is a matrix item, it's not quite as simple to add a baseball cap. You don't just type the stock number and hit enter. Type the stock number, enter, but then you're prompted to hit a size. So we'd have to come down and actually choose a size. And this is supported in QwikTouchPro. Same thing with like if you add a book, you get prompted if you want to, there's a scripting item on there to prompt if you want to bookmark. We can handle all that in QwikTouchPro. It's out of the scope of this video. But essentially when we'd click on one of these buttons, we would be aware that it's a matrix item or a book or has a scripted item on it. And then we would prompt with an additional template that says, pick a size or something like that. Anyway, out of scope of this video, but it's very much supported. So what's the next thing we might want to do on this template? This is a really long list of inventory items. This is everything in our Tutor export. So let's start by filtering this list down a little bit. So let's go back into QwikTouchPro. And again, I'm going to right click on the data view, configure data view, and we have an option here for a default row filter. And this, just whatever, when this template loads, what data do we want to see filtered out? And I'm just going to set the department to equal promotional and hit OK. And again, you won't see this this change in the editor. You have to preview the template. But now we're going to filter this list down so we only see our promotional items, which of course all have our images on them. And now we can ring up items. So the next thing we want to do here is we're going to create a list of department items that the customer's going to be able to click on to filter this list. So right now we're looking at promotional items. They'll be able to touch, books to refresh this list and show us the book templates or the book items. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Let's close this, go back into QwikTouchPro. One thing I want to do, actually, I'm going to go back in here, highlight this background. I don't want this to have a border thickness or border radius. And I'm going to save that again. And if we refresh our template now, did I save that? Should have refreshed. What happened there? Oh, I refreshed the promotional items. So you notice our promotional items now no longer have a border behind them. So let's close that. Go back into QwikTouchPro. And I actually meant to, I meant to open the inventory item, and let's click this guy as well and have no border thickness, no border radius. Save that, back to the sales screen. Now if we refresh our template, our changes are there. So that just gets rid of that little line between the buttons. Just personal preference, doesn't really matter. So the next thing we want to do though is create a list of inventory items here, and we're going to need a data source for our inventory, or for our departments, So let's go back to our keystroke folder. I have created this department export.txt file that I manually created. We could do the same thing we did for our keystroke inventory export. We could run a KIOSK export pointed at our department items, but I created this file manually. And one of the reasons I did that is I wanted this wingding column at the end. Again, don't want to use icons and images any more than I have to on this template, so I'm going to use wingdings. So I found some wingdings to represent each one of these departments. So I just kind of manually created this list of what I think 8 departments. And that's going to be our data source for these next buttons. And again, you could do a keystroke inventory export, KS export to departments, just like we did with inventory. But let's close that, close that. Let's go back in here. Let's create our data source first. So we'll go under data sources, new. This will be comma separated values. And I'm going to browse out to see keystroke department export, that file I manually created that we just looked at. It does have column headers in the first row, and you can see we've got my department, the name, and the wingding font that I want to use to represent it. So we'll hit create. Let's call this keystroke department export. Save. Don't need to add this to our template. We're not going to be doing macros with it. And now same thing. I want to know how many departments I can fit in this list here. And again, we know the height of the template. We could do the math on this. We know I have 8 departments, and we know how tall this is. But I'm still lazy, so I'm going to just drop a control on here that's going to help me size these. Get the width right. I'm going to copy and paste, and we have 2 of them. Copy and paste both of those to get up to 4. Copy and paste all of those, and now we've got our, whoops, grabbed too much. I had that selected. Let's undo that. Copy and paste. And now we have our 8 items here. And if I select all of those and Control G to group and pan down, scroll in a little bit, zoom in a little bit, I should be able to drag this down to the bottom wherever I want it, about there. And again, we're just laying out, trying to figure out how big we want our inventory, our department buttons to be. And now I've got it laid out. I'll right click, ungroup. Should be done with all of these, so we'll delete them, and we just want one to tell us how big the size is. And in this case, we're going to be a width of 210 and a height of, looks like 193, maybe 194. So same as we did before, we'll copy that, new template, and we're going to make this a width of 2.1 and a height of, looks like 1.9 probably. Let's try that. And the rest of this doesn't matter, like the full screen, whether we're showing primary or modal or window mode or whatever. It doesn't matter because we're using this as an item template. So we'll say OK, paste our control in there, back out a little bit. And let's just make sure that fits by grabbing it and resizing it. And Control S to save. And let's call this department. What do we call this? Item template, let's say. Okay. And let's just put a plain text on here that's going to be the department name. Start with that. And actually, I think I know the name of this is, I think the longest department we have is promotional. Whoops. Promotional. So let's just use that to size it. Move that down. That over, size it in. And we could probably make the font just a little bigger there. And we also want another text on here for that wingding that I created. So let's just pick a value for that. And if I go to my font list and hit W to take me to the W's, hit W again to go to webdings, one more time to go to, whoops, let's do that again, wingdings, there we go. So again, I'm just hitting W to cycle through all of those. Get a wingding on there. Let's make the font bigger on that. And let's just save this and kind of see where we're at. Actually, one more change. Let's go back into this. No border thickness, no border radius. Save that. And go back into our sales screen, and we can delete this now. And now we're ready to add another data view onto this canvas for the department list. So we'll go to data view. We're going to browse out to our data source, which is our keystroke department export, that manual file I created. We're going to browse out to the item for each department, which is this department item template we just created. We want this to scroll vertically as well, and we'll say OK. And there are our items. So let's move that up and just scroll this down to the bottom. And again, we haven't bound these up yet, so they all say promotional or whatever on them. And we don't quite have enough room. Our template's just a little long. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm just going to move this one up. Let's undo that. With the Shift key and the arrow keys, I'm going to move that up. Zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to make this border bigger to make everything fit. We could spend some time redoing that and aligning these things, but for this video, let's just make it quick and save that. And for preview our template now, we're going to see that we have one side, we have our scrolling list of inventory. On the left side, our list doesn't scroll because we have 8 promotional items, and that's how many our list is holding. So there's no room for it to scroll. Let's go back into our department item, and I actually think I want to put some different colors on here. Let's drag our color palette back on. And let's say I want the background color on this to be white, I think is fine. Now let's do the background color gray. Let's make it the light gray. And then let's make the font color this dark gray. And save that. Delete our color picker. And let's bind these buttons up. So promotional, if we go back under data, data binding, browse out to our department export. We've only got 3 values here, name, department, wingding. We want the name and apply. Let's come up and hit this guy and we want the wingding, hit apply. And I can come change this text back to like A or something and save that back into our sales screen. And now if we refresh our template again, you will see that we have a list of all of our inventory items with their wingdings. Let's just hit preview on that and see how we're looking. All right, so this looks pretty good. We've got a list of departments down the side. We got our list of inventory items here. And did we wire those up? We wired those up, right? So whoops. Looking at a canvas bag, yeah. So next thing we want to do is when we touch one of these inventory or one of these department items, we want to filter this list down to whatever item we just clicked on. So let's go back into QwikTouchPro. We're going to right click on this. Actually, let's name this one again first. Let's call this DV department list. And now if we right click on this and choose configure, or I'm sorry, macro editor, same thing. So when we touch department list or when the selection changes, we want to filter this list down. So we're going to go to a data view. Where's data view? Data view. We're going to set a row filter. We want to set the row filter. We could do inventory or department. We're going to filter the inventory list. And we want to set the department to be equal to whatever they clicked on in this list. And we'll do that through the source control builder icon again. Select the source type is a data view. It's the department list that we want this time. And we're going to send DEPT, which is the code for department, that 2 or 3 or 4 letter code for department, which is what we need to filter by. So we'll say OK. Add that. Add that. Close, save, preview. And now if I hit DVD, we're going to filter down to all of our DVD items. If I hit Office, we'll see all of our Office items. And if we go back to Promotional, we'll see that we have all our items with the images next to them. So the next thing I want to do is when we've selected one of these departments, I kind of want to highlight this button so we know that's selected. So let's go back into QwikTouchPro. And to do that, let's go back into our department list. We're going to make a copy of this department item, and we're going to call this one selected. And this is going to be a template that's going to represent the selected item. So we'll hit save. And I really just kind of want to invert this button, I think. How do we want to do this? Maybe we'll set the background color to white. How's that look? Let's try that and see how it looks anyway. So we'll go back into our sales screen. We're going to right click on our department list and go to configure data view. And we have a selected items template here. And we're just going to expand that, browse out, and say our selected item is going to be represented by this department template selected item. And we also need to change our selection mode. Its current selection mode is click, and in click mode it works like a button. You push the item in, it performs whatever action it's going to take, and then the item comes back out, or the button unpresses, if you will, and it doesn't stay selected. So we won't end up seeing our selected item. So we're going to change the selection mode from single, or from click to single. Works exactly like click, except the button's going to remain selected. And we'll hit OK, save that, preview that. And now if I hit DVD, we should see that we have the DVD department selected, and here's all our DVDs. If I hit Office, we'll see all of our office supplies all the way through the list. Next thing I want to do is when we open up this template, we are selected on the promotional items. So I just want to select that button by default. And we're going to do that through exit that. QwikTouchPro, we're going to right click on... see, actually, how do we want to do this? We're going to go under template load. So template macros load. And when this template loads, we're going to set a selected item on this department list. So we'll say data view. We've got some options here. We've got select the first, the next, the previous, the last, and we're going to select by index in this case. And the way indexes work is the first item on the list is index 0, second 1, 2, 3. So if we want promotional, which is the second item on this list, that's actually the first index. So the index is going to be 1. And again, Office is 0, promotional is 1, books is 2. So when this template loads, we just want to select the item at index 1, which is promotional on this inventory list. Save, preview. And now we should see, and we didn't. Why didn't our... Let's go back in there. Under template load, set data view index. Yes, I picked the wrong. I set the index on inventory list, and I should have done department list. Let's just fix that, hit update, close, save, preview. And now when we come out to it, promotional is automatically selected to show us that that's the inventory items we're looking at. What else do we want to do on this template? I think next thing we need to do is probably wire up this cancel button. If the customer's on this template and they decide they don't want to ring up this sale, they can hit cancel to go back to our touch here to begin screen. But we notice we also need to clear our transaction. They could be in the middle of a sale, and the way we clear a transaction in keystroke is Control End, and then F10 or Enter to confirm that transaction's cleared. So we just need to create a macro that's going to do that. Let's go back into QwikTouchPro. Whoops, hit the right guy there. Let's come down to our template. I'm going to save that. I'm going to make sure it's saved. I think it is, though. So I'm going to double click on the cancel button to open up its macro editor. And when we click this button, we want to clear the transaction and go back to the touch here to begin screen. So we're going to say active program, send code, and the active program is going to be keystroke. And the code we want to send is Control End to clear the transaction. And I'm just going to hit E to cycle down to the E's there. Control End, add code, add. So we're going to send Control End, and then we're going to send active program, send code. We want to send an F10, which we can scroll down on our list. F10, add. So Control End, F10 is going to clear the transaction, and then we want to go to QwikTouchPro, show template, and we're going to go back to our touch here to begin screen. And hit add, and no, we don't want to customize how this template's displayed. So we'll hit OK, and save that and preview that. And let's add an item to our invoice now. And if we hit our cancel button, we should clear the transaction, automatically go back to touch here to begin, where the next customer can come up and start ringing up their sales. Next thing we need to do, we're on the touch here to begin, but we haven't wired up this yet. We need to be able to touch this to go back to our sales screen. So let's do that next. Back into QwikTouchPro. We're done with some of these. I'm going to close some of these templates that we have open that we're not working with anymore. And let's go back to touch here to begin and zoom out. So what I want to do here, we've got some text, 2 pieces of text on this. And if I touch anywhere on the screen, I want to go to the next template, the sales screen. So I'm just going to create a border over the top of all of this. And we'll bump it up to the top. Let's nudge and tweak it over. Same thing, no thickness, no radius, just personal preference here. And we'll make it full width. And then we're going to drag it down to the full height. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key and the arrow key again here to move that down to the bottom. And I'm going to name this BRD, let's say touch here overlay maybe. Zoom out a little bit. So now I'm just going to right click on this, go to macro editor. And when we touch this big button, we're going to go to QwikTouchPro, show template. And we're going to browse out to our sales screen. Add, we're not going to customize it. We say OK. And next thing we want to do is hide this. We want to be able to see the text underneath it. So we're going to go under layout, visibility, set the visibility to 0. And now we can still click on it, and it's still the top control on this template. So it's all you can click on, but we can see the controls underneath it. And the last thing I'm going to do is, because this is invisible now and takes this full template, I'm going to come up here and freeze it. And when you freeze a control, it becomes partially opaque. And that's why the screen dimmed a little bit, is to let us know that there's a large hidden control on that. But now we can come through and select the other controls on this canvas. All freezing does is make the control so we can't select it in the editor. It still works fine in QwikTouchPro, and it's just a little trick to make it easier. Now we can get in here, and if we needed to change this text or something, we don't have to try to click around that big control. So again, freezing is just kind of a way, if you have a control that's already laid out where you want it and it's in the way, you can freeze it and just get it out of your way so you can click around it. So anyway, let's hit save on that. And let's just preview that and see where we're at. Now, if we touch anywhere on this button, we should automatically go, or anywhere on that template, we should automatically go to our main screen or our sales screen. Cancel, go back to there. We can touch again and go back and forth. And I think that's probably going to do it for this template. In the next video, then, we're going to pick up, we'll move on to where we're going to wire up the checkout button, which will take us to our next screen where we can review our inventory items. And until then, thanks for watching.